It took nearly 20 loud knocks at the laboratory door before the doctor was awoken from his afternoon nap. "The Brigadier must have a stone in his boot, or forgotten how to boil an egg or something equally mundane," he grumbled to himself as he strode across the room, each angry step being emphasized purposely by the bang of his Cuban heels on the concrete floor. The figure on the other side of the door was about to go for another volley of knocks, so the doctor hurried himself to beat them there and spare his ears. He had managed to open the door in time to stop Fist making contact with glass, but in turn found himself getting lightly tapped on the chest by the unfamiliar guest he was now face to face with. Stood in front of him was a dark-haired woman in a black and white checkered cardigan. She swayed very subtly from side to side, as if to steady herself, and smelt of stale smoke and cheap ale. "Am I to assume you're the new assistant I requested? I say, you have big shoes to fill after Miss Shaw, so I suggest—" The doctor was cut off by the woman barging him out the way. "Assistant my ass," she exclaimed, fast walking into the lab and scanning the room briefly. "I've just suffered a very traumatic experience. The last thing I need is a pimp bossing me around." She continued to survey the room. "Now make yourself useful and tell me where the booze is. Oh, and get the doctor too. I need a word." "Of all the confounded things, you cannot merely barge into my laboratory unannounced and expect me to wait on you hand and foot." The intruder matched the doctor's anger with contempt. "Oh well, I'm sorry," she said sarcastically. "Let me start over again." She walked back to the open door where the doctor was still standing, and curtsied. "Good day, my good sir. I hope you're having a fine afternoon. I have just been aggressively hurled across the barriers of space-time by an exploding Tardis, and ended up in a men's bog. I am looking for the doctor of this universe, and also a very strong drink if you'd be so bloody kind. Is that better?" The doctor felt his temper mellow, as something in the back of his brain told him to look after this person. He couldn't quite put his finger on it, though. The woman sat herself down delicately in a chair in the corner of the laboratory. She held the arms tight, as she felt like she was about to topple over the sides. The doctor's loud footsteps resonated deafeningly in the woman's sensitive ears as he marched over to the drinks globe. "I'm afraid I don't have much to offer you at the moment, my dear. A Dom Perignon 63, some 30-year-old Macallan Scotch whiskey, a delicious chablis that would go splendid with some Beaufort cheese I have around here somewhere." "Well, I'm sure whatever you just said tastes lovely, but I'm looking for something that wouldn't look out of place wrapped in a blue carrier bag under the fluorescent light of a bus stop." "Right," the doctor said as he slowly rehoused his expensive collection. "Well, I'm sure Benton and the unit lads might keep some beer in the mess if that's more to your taste." The woman's eyes lit up, and she seemed to gain a second wind of energy. "Excellent. Well, there's no time to waste." She was out of the lab, down the corridor in remarkable speed. The doctor had trouble maintaining a dignified pace while he tried to keep up with the determined woman racing to the mess hall. "So what is it you wish to speak to the doctor about?" "Well, I'm him, or her, from another universe," she said while sashaying down the corridor. "My TARDIS was destroyed by some cheeky Time Lords, but miraculously I was saved. My TARDIS used all her power to cocoon me and throw me sideways in time. Me and the console ended up next to a urinal in this building, and lo and behold, it's the building where the doctor works." The two made their way through the mess hall and into the empty kitchen. "If I were a rowdy army boy," she muttered to herself, "where would I keep the booze? Any suggestions from the pimp?" The doctor said nothing as he walked over to a chalkboard on the far wall and removed it to reveal a mini stockpile of canned lager. "And I would appreciate it if you would not refer to me in that way." "I'll call you Dandy, then." She turned her attention to the alcohol. "Valhalla!" she exclaimed. She drank one can with tremendous speed, tossed it aside and opened a second. After another huge gulp, she let out a burp and gave out a satisfied sigh. She spotted a packet of cigarettes alongside the contraband. "Oh, Rassilon is smiling on me today." She lit it, took a drag, and let out a noise that could only be described as pure ecstasy. "Much obliged, Andy." Her voice was softer now. "How did you know the doctor worked here?" asked the doctor. "There's a bulletin in the lobby asking him to stop parking right by the entrance." "Well, if the Brigadier allocated my parking spot closer to the lab, I wouldn't need to." He stopped himself, realizing he had just given away his advantage. "Ah, so you're the one I'm looking for," she said. "Well, it would explain the outfit." The two doctors shared a table in the mess hall. The other world doctor now on her third can, while the dandy doctor opted for a cup of sweet hot tea. Rather a dire predicament you were in, I see. It was lucky your Tardis had the initiative to save you. But you can't stay here, I'm afraid. I'm already in hot water with the Time Lords, as you well know. If I allow a parallel version of myself to occupy the same universe, well, then there would be hell to pay. Well, don't worry about that, she slurred. I don't plan on being the Doctor anymore anyway. It's too much hassle. I just want to retire and live quietly in some nowhere village for the next few millennia. The sound of running footsteps caught both doctors' attention. It was Sergeant Benton sprinting down the corridor. Doctor! Thank goodness, we've been looking everywhere for you! He regarded the female guest. Oh, I'm sorry, Mom. Is it not a bit early for that? Damn it, Benton, what is it, man? Sorry, sir. It's just the men have found a strange object in the loo. Don't worry. It's mine. It's mine. The other world doctor spewed. I'll have it out your hair in no time, Sergeant Benson. Benton, Mom. Benton. Sorry, Doctor. Would you accompany me to the toilet? The dandy doctor didn't reply, but he did whisper into Benton's ear. Say nothing to the Brigadier, Sergeant. Followed by a look that instilled more fear in Benton than any paranormal being could. The dandy and the drunk both stared at the TARDIS console wedged between sink and urinal. I guess we just pivot until it fits out the door. The dandy shook his head and touched a few times. An imprudent idea, my dear. I have the tools to dismantle this in my own TARDIS. If you think you can last a few hours before your next drink, then we shall do it together. Fine, whatever. Dandy departed and the drunk was left alone with her thoughts. She didn't like his seemingly superior tone, and allowed her feelings to spiral into hate. That pompous ass! Just because he doesn't have any vices, he thinks he can talk like that to me? She scoffed to herself. Well, maybe we should help him move his precious little car. Outside the unit headquarters, a semi-inebriated, totally conspicuous woman in a black and white checkered cardigan was attempting to hotwire an equally conspicuous yellow roadster. Come on, you stubborn bastard car, let Mummy have a bit of fun! After a few minutes of logical deduction and drunken guesswork, the little car coughed into life. Lovely jubbly! The car rocketed down country lanes, seemingly no limit to its acceleration. Come on, Brum, let's see if we can beat the sunset! She pushed her foot down harder and headed further west. After another hour, she was driving in the dark. The adorable little lamps fixed to the front of the car illuminated the gloomy road ahead. The radio had been blasting the popular music for the era, and the doctor felt free for the first time in ages. Hello, hello, come in, please, spoke a familiar voice through the speakers. Turn down that blasted music and return my car at once! It was the other doctor. He must have only just realized he had been robbed, and he seemed to be communicating through the radio. What are you gonna do, Grandad? Shouted the drunk as she turned the music up louder. This is your last chance, spoke the man on the radio. Catch me if you can, dandy man, were the words that sealed her fate. She felt the steering wheel lock up and the engine quieten. The music turned off and the car made a complete stop. The words manual override appeared on the screen in the dashboard. Before she could fully comprehend the situation, the driver's seat ejected itself out the top of the car, throwing the doctor 30 feet into the air. As a parachute deployed and slowly brought her to the ground, she heard the voice of the dandy once again from inside the little roadster. And let that be a lesson to you! The car then drove away into the distance. At least I won't feel bad about swiping his wallet, she thought to herself as she ungraciously hit the floor. The doctor walked slowly down the pitch-black country road. Alone in a strange universe with merely the clothes on her back, a sonic screwdriver, and a non-functioning TARDIS console miles away in a men's toilet. She thought back to her human friends from her universe, Cherry and Cheese, and how they were prospectless alcoholics who were only good for enabling each other. They still made good company. Heck, those two Time Lords who hunted her down would be more comforting than this endless winding road. After about 3 expletive-filled arguments with herself and miles of puddle-laden tarmac, the doctor noticed she was near civilization. In the distance, she could hear a large group of people. The more she followed the voices, the closer she got to the woods. A faint yellow glow led her closer and closer to the gathering. She eventually made it to an opening where a large group of middle-aged people in tweed were idly chattering around a large pile of wood surrounded by small bonfires. "Well, this is a turn-up for the books," she said to herself. "I seem to have stumbled into whatever the opposite of a hippie commune is." She spotted a few members congregating near a large punch bowl and decided to mingle. "Good evening, chaps," she said in her most ostentatious upper-class accent while ladling a generous amount of punch in her cup. "I seem to have misplaced my agenda. What time does everything start?" Her prying was largely ignored, except for a very jolly-faced, red, stout man with a curly moustache who wandered over to her. "What a delicious little outfit you have there, my dear! You know, you look just like my mistress. Don't tell the wife, though." He attempted to tap his nose but missed. "We're nearly set up. Just waiting for Father Brady to start the ceremony and then we'll light the pyre." "Ah, well, thank you. I'll just get myself a bit more punch and make sure I don't get in the way. Oh, by the way, is there any way you could give me a lift to unit?" She was cut off by Father Brady announcing himself rather pretentiously with a bugle. Everyone silenced immediately and faced the priest. Even the red-faced man seemed to sober up. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for all your attendance, both myself and the Lord God. We are gathered here in secrecy as to do the work society has grown too soft for. Too long have we spat in God's face by allowing these heinous acts take place on this holy ground, in England no less." The crowd cheered at that last remark. "I shall not waste your time here, people," he continued. "I know you are all eager to return to your normal lifestyles." He then gestured to someone off in the distance to come forward, and out of the darkness came a large hooded man pulling a cart with a metal cage on it. Inside the cage were two men who had been badly beaten. The crowd then erupted with anger and vitriol, hurling insults as well as anything they could find on the forest floor at the cage. The doctor couldn't think. She was torn between running away, relinquishing the title of doctor, and spending the rest of her days in cowardly solitude, or be the hero that was stolen from her in exile. "These two heathens have surrendered their rights as human beings when they—" The priest stopped briefly to hold back what seemed like a nauseous gag. Coupled together," he said in a much softer tone. "These two animals will burn on the pyre as both an apology to God and an example to anyone else who wants to engage in this lifestyle." Out from the heated crowd stepped the doctor, and she was about to take a crack at diplomacy for the first time in years. Whoa, guys! I think this little get-together has gone a weensy bit too far, don't you think?" The crowd was silent. She had all their attention. "Just because these two young men want to be together, in private I might add, doesn't mean they should be killed. Come on, it's the year 2000. Can't we keep our prejudices in the 20th century?" The crowd murmured in confusion between one another, noticing she lost the attention of the gathering. The doctor turned to two caged men. What year is this?" 1971. "Bollocks." As the mass continued to susurrate, the doctor tried to hatch a different approach. "Oh, bugger. Early 70s, very conservative, God-fearing, could try some premature satanic panic." Lifting her arms, she addressed the crowd once again. "Right, yous lot! I've held back, but obviously you are not heeding my warning. With this magic wand, I shall summon Satan himself to come drag you all to hell." Silence once again followed her speech. She felt silly standing there, holding out her sonic screwdriver for so long with no reaction. "Well, you asked for it!" She activated her sonic and popped the corks of every wine bottle around the drinks table. She finally got her reaction, as everyone in the woods erupted in terror. In the commotion of everyone screaming and running about, she opened the cage and let the prisoners out. "Get out here, boys! Run like the wind!" They did as she said, and were out in the dark of the woods in no time. The doctor decided to run in the opposite direction, so to draw people away from the boys. "Grab the agent of Satan!" commanded Father Brady. And just like that, the doctor found herself being tackled by the red-faced man she had conversed with earlier. His large mass caused the two of them to crash through the wine-soaked drinks table. As she lay under his weight, she ashamedly sucked what alcohol she could from the ground. It could be my last drink, she surmised. The doctor, now tied up on the pyre, reflected on her decision earlier. It was much more interesting than listening to Father Brady's long sermon. 5 minutes ago she had a whole life of relaxation and peace ahead of her. Now she waits to burn to death. Thinking about it, she knew that particular life wasn't for her. She would get incredibly bored, and try to build a time destructor out of anything she could buy at the local petrol station, or something along those lines. She comforted herself, knowing at least those 2 boys are safe for the night. Let's hope they don't end up as murderous dictators, or I'll look a right wally. The perimeter of torch-bearing psychopaths shrunk smaller and smaller as they were about to light the pyre, when suddenly a gunshot was heard from the darkness. "Everyone get on the ground! Do not attempt to flee!" shouted a very handsome man, in the doctor's opinion anyway, with a tidy moustache, beret, and smoking handgun. UNIT had come to the rescue, and, sticking out like a sore thumb, was the other doctor, looking like he had changed outfit since they last met. "Do not let these men dispel you, my brothers and sisters! You are indestructible, with God as your ally!" With that command from Father Brady, the congregation dumped their torches on the pyre and went to attack UNIT. The fight ended up being very one-sided, and concluded with the dandy doctor judo-chopping Father Brady on the neck and sending him straight to the floor. The dandy doctor climbed up the burning pyre and started untying his counterpart. "No! I want that man with the moustache to rescue me," she said half-jokingly. The doctor sat with the other doctor in his yellow car from before. In the background was the hustle and bustle of boring unit proceedings. "How did you know where I was?" she asked, shivering. Her wine-soaked shirt was making the already cold night much colder. "Well, you still had something of mine, my dear." He reached for her pocket and pulled out his stolen wallet and opened it to reveal a little beeping tracker. "As we were looking around, we came across 2 terrified boys who told us what was going on. It was good of you to save them, you know." "Well," she said modestly, "it's what the doctor would have done." "Yes, it is. Are you still considering retirement?" "No, of course not. I'm still young. Relatively. I'm just going to stick out my thumb and hitch a ride with the next passing alien ship." "That's not as easy as you think. But if you're willing to try for another dimension, then I may be able to help you." "All set?" asked the doctor, poised over her lavatory-based Tardis. "Nuclear reactors primed and ready for launch," replied the dandy doctor. Behind him stood a very unhappy brigadier. "Do remind me, Doctor, why I had to use a day's worth of manpower to link a nuclear reactor to the unit bathroom. Can't you do this in your laboratory?" "Brigadier, I am helping a friend find a universe they can occupy. Do I really need to waste time moving all the equipment to my lab when the bulk of it is here?" The brigadier rolled his eyes and left the room. "Safe journey, man," he shouted back before departing. "So how sure are you that this won't just take me to the evil opposite day Earth you went to?" "Well, let's put it this way. If you do end up there, you won't be upset about it for very long." "Why's that?" "It's miles high in liquid hot magma." "Oh, great." "Anyway, I'm pretty certain that repeating the experiment with these conditions will send you to any random universe. Hopefully one where you can stay. Are you sure you want to risk this?" The doctor looked down at her TARDIS console, hesitated briefly, and looked back at the dandy. "I'm sure. Anything is better than exile." The dandy pulled a lever and watched as his female counterpart slowly faded away, along with her TARDIS console and the whole of the men's lavatory. The brigadier is not going to be happy about this.